Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Global Renaissance Podcast, where we have thoughtful conversations on society and self and celebrate those who are exercising their creativity. As always, I'm your host, Trav Woods, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. I wouldn't even do him the disservice of putting him in a genre box, but just know that he is a very, very, very versatile recording artist, and he goes by the name of Echezona. How you doing today, bro?
I'm doing all right, boss. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you coming on. I've been seeing your journey now. What is it, 2025? It's probably been like 5 years. Like I said, I wouldn't do you the disservice of putting you in a box of a genre, but you have a lot of talents when it comes to your music. You can rap, you can vocalize. So I guess we could put you somewhere between hip hop, Afrofusion, just for you guys in the audience to get a sense of the type of music he makes. But for those who aren't familiar with your music, how would you describe it?
Whew, that's a real important question. Um, Off the rip, I'm a lyricist at heart. Very big on the words. Those are important to me. So, off rip, I can tell you that whether it's a hip hop song or an Afrofusion song, Afrobeat song, it starts with getting a message across in a way that's digestible for the audience. And the part that makes it universally acceptable or relatable comes from being able to infuse melody, cadences, and real life situations. So I like to say that hip hop and Afrofusion are the two worlds that come together because no matter what, I'm true to my roots of being Nigerian,
Yep.
but the lyricist part will always matter whether I'm singing or I'm rapping. So.
Right. For sure. And I think that's really dope. Me being someone who's grown up, I grew up listening to hip hop, especially, but R&B, and over the years have gained a strong appreciation for Afrobeats. Lyrics are something that, like you said, it transcends genre, right? Like whether you could be listening to a country song, right, and the words that they're saying, if they are relatable, and they're powerful, they're going to connect. And so I want to start right there with lyrics when you're writing. First of all, tell me about your recording process. Do you write beforehand, then go to the studio? Do you go to the studio and write in the studio? What's that process like? And then I'll ask you a little bit more about how you're coming up with the things you're writing about.
Absolutely. So 9 times out of 10, I'm writing before I go to the studio. A lot of the ideas I come up with can be in the most randomest of places, and so I make it a point to stop what I'm doing and record a voice note.
Yep.
It could be a melody and doesn't have the words yet, but then eventually I fill in the words. So it's only rarely am I in the studio and something comes up that I hear. I'll stop and be like, hold on, let me write in the corner, and come up with something.
Yeah. And then when you're picking out beats that ultimately you're gonna, sing a rap over, how do you decide on those? Are you getting beats sent to you? Are you going on YouTube? Like, do you have people you're working with? You're like, hey, I had this idea. Can you make this happen? Are you making them yourself? What's your beat selection process like?
Yeah, so I'm signed to Comatose Records. I've been for the past 5 years now. And so my producer, Jay Prism, usually I'm in the studio and I'll have the idea in my head. And I'll say, hey, man, here's the reference. Here's what I heard that could help lead us to where we're trying to go. Very rarely will he have something already whipped up that I'll say, oh, I wrote to this. But a lot of times I'm coming in with ideas off the head that I want him to bring to life.
Gotcha.
He does this, that.
Gotcha. And I think that's super dope. I've always heard stories of, like artists and producers getting in the studio and then they work some magic together. And I think one of the things I love most about music is that collaborative nature of the process where you, as the artist, you're like, well, I have this idea. I have maybe some melodies or I have some lyrics that I've written down, but I need you to come in and make this picture whole. And I think that's really dope. As far as the lyrics that you're writing down, what type of subject matter do you like to cover in your music?
These days I talk to the girls, man. I think growing up, like from doing music as early as 2010, I was so concerned with being the best lyricist, the best rapper.
Yeah.
And it's like, on good accounts, I've proven that. If you grew up with me in the city, I've made my strides to show that I can definitely bar with the best. But now it's about talking to the women. And I say that because a lot of my songs that have captured their attention has been ones that had melody. Like I was talking to them about real life stuff. I go through a lot of instances with women to this day.
Yeah.
You be surprised, you know what I'm saying, what can be on the mind in real time. But that's my focus these days, is talking to them and being upfront about, hey, here's how we men reason. Here's how I know y'all reason. Here are the similarities.
Yeah.
Here where we differ. that's really what the focus has been these
Yeah.
days.
I mean, that's smart. Women are the tastemakers, as they say. So,
1000%.
when you're looking to really have that broad appeal, it makes sense. I think it's interesting. I love bars personally, right? I remember you posted something. I don't know if it was a live that had like you just kind of posted later or something you had just recorded, but you was going off the top. I was like, this nigga's crazy. This is off the top. This nigga's crazy.
Sir.
Can you speak more on the transition or the difference in approach from just trying to bar up and show like my pen is something serious versus, all right, I want to incorporate some melodies. I want to maybe do something that has a little bit more broad appeal.
Yeah, so from when I first signed with Comatose Records, part of the discourse that was happening on my artistry came when I dropped a song like Galileo, which ended up getting on NBA 2K21. So for me, it was like,
Facts.
that was always where people were like, oh, so this is what you do now? Because they know me to bar it up. But the truth is, it's like, yo, I know the best of lyricists that are in the city who have no intentions of evolving their sound, even if they want to make it so that their bars are more digestible. I'm not saying sacrifice the art.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, part of what has gotten me far and, you know, given me the ability to evolve as an artist has come from me being able to listen to what's going on and not sacrifice the art, but see how I can blend it in. My upcoming album that I'm working on, it's a situation where I still rap on there, but now it's like, yo, sit with this 8-bar verse.
Yeah.
Let's see if you can even, like, catch all the nuances and the wordplay I did there before you ask me for a 32.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not that I'm not rapping anymore. Yes, has it been definitely a shift in terms of what's been prioritized? Yes, I get it. And a lot of it has to deal with just the rooms I've been in. That's why I'm sitting to you right now, you know, two Boston kids from, you know, in the room in LA.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it has come from me being able to listen to what fills up stadiums and then implement lyricism to find its way there. That's all. Yeah.
That's, I mean, you said it. There is, and this is something that I've noticed being a fan of music. You know, growing up, I was actually just talking to somebody about this like yesterday. I was talking about kind of like the evolution of the music that I listened to, and like in the mid 2000s when I was like 7, 8, when I first really started developing my own music taste, like hip hop was ran by street rappers, right? It was Lil Wayne, Jeezy, T.I., you know what I'm saying, like. Name anybody. They were probably making street music, and it has a level of mass appeal. But then as you know, Kanye did his 808s thing, and then you know Drake comes along, and then suddenly hip hop is super melodic, and that's when it exploded. So to be a student of the game and recognize that, and then look at your own artistry and say, well, I'm not necessarily sacrificing what it is that I love or like doing, but I'm broadening what it is that I have to offer. I mean, I think I've always said this, if you're able to reassess what it is you're doing in terms of your work, whatever it is, and then you're able to adjust based off feedback or based off your own analysis, like that is a true testament to humility as an individual, but also just savvy. So I think that is, you know, admirable, and it's a lesson for anybody in any space where it's like you gotta adjust because things don't stay the same. Can we take a step back? Because you said you've been making music since 2010. Talk to me about the foundations of music for you. Where does your love come from? When did you first get the idea of like, I want to start making music? Give me that whole history.
Absolutely. So from Jump Street, both of my parents were in the choir. Shout out to them. They're the foundation for everything I am today. And so I myself was in the choir playing the African drums from as early as age 4.
Yep.
So that right there was my first exposure to live music in real time. And eventually it was just watching videos, Nigerian home videos of artists performing, and they would have dancers in the back, and they'd be in Nigerian regalia down to the socks. And for me, that was always so intriguing. I used to envision myself being in that screen doing the same thing. Fast forward, I joined the Boys and Girls Club, the Blue Hill Boys and Girls Club on Talbot Ave, and I would freestyle with my friends for fun. And everybody was like, yo, you're nice. Like, you got to join the music room. In the music room, you had to be 10 years old to join. So I was only 8 at the time, so I had to wait a little bit. But I would see the group called Studio Heat perform during summer camp, and it was like, yeah, no, I can't wait for my turn. I turned 10 years old, walked in there, met my mentor Rick. The rest is history. Was in the studio from 6 to 8 every day, Monday through Friday, for 8 years straight.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What is it like to have that level of focus at that young of an age?
Man, honestly, I just gotta credit God's favor on me because I always say that the Blue Hill Club changed my life,
Yeah.
saved my life, because I could have very much found myself after school, going to school as a Metco student in Weston. I could have found myself involved in the wrong activity with the wrong friends if I didn't have the Boys and Girls Club to keep me grounded. And I think for me, it was just the many rooms I ended up entering.
Yeah.
Like, there's no 12-year-old kid I knew who was going to school in a suit, dressed up, because, he had to perform at Paul Pierce's retirement party at the TD Garden after and didn't
Yeah.
have time to change. Like, that was a different life that I was living off of just committing to the music room, And so for me, I think it was seeing the benefit of, wow, I love this. It's putting me in the right places in new rooms at such a young age. It's only sharpening my skill and my networking abilities. It's only right to, my mom used to be concerned about me being there late. Obviously, my grades were solid. It wasn't the greatest, but it was enough to get by.
Yeah.
I think my mom and dad always wanted me to be the straight A student who could become a doctor, but I've managed to.
We know the archetype.
You know what I'm saying? I managed to get enough decent grades to, still make it to graduate high school, graduate college, and be going for my master's. So, I was in there committed. I loved it. I lived and breathed everything about the studio. I could stay there all night to this day. It's just, it's honestly just because of what I know I'm put on this earth to do, and I'm more than convinced that those 8 to 9 years of being dedicated just continue to fuel my focus now.
I mean, that's for sure. I think the NBA All-Star Weekend was recent, and one of the things I always draw comparisons between music and athletics, but then the rest of life. And the one thing with athletes is most of them, when you hear their stories, they start off really young. And so that is an advantage to have that focus at a young age. Because when I was 8, 9, 10, I was doing this, that, or whatever, running around getting dirty, scraping my knee up. But I didn't have a level of focus on most things. I was pretty good in school because my parents didn't play that. A B is unacceptable. So, you know what I'm saying? But it was more so one of those things that just came naturally. But I didn't have my own personal drive to do stuff. And so to have that is such an advantage, but to also not lose it. Was there any point in the last however many years where you were kind of I don't know, or was it always that focus stuck with you and you stuck with your craft?
That's a great question, man. I'll be honest with you. I was so stubborn about full transparency. I was a chubby kid growing up. And so it was to a point where my mom was like, listen, you're going to have to cut back on going to the studio. You're going to have to sign up for yoga at the Boys and Girls Club. And it was I'm not cutting back on music. But if I could squeeze in a little Tuesday, Thursday doing yoga, whatever, fine, cool. Other than that, even when my grades weren't the greatest, and my dad was like, maybe you have to take time to, no. I'm going to get my grades right. But I am not going to the studio. It's not happening. I think the only moments where I even remotely had a little bit of unsureness was when I graduated from high school, became an alum at the Boys and Girls Club. You graduate to an alum, so you're not a member every day. You're in college. So what does recording look like? What does going to the studio look like? So to be signed to the team I'm signed to now, who I met, I met them through being a Boys and Girls Club kid. It's almost like God was always directing my steps to say, yo, all right, once you're done here, this is where you're going to end up. And I'm so fortunate to be in a situation where I have a team that is continuing to invest in me all this while and putting me in the spaces to still be dedicated. So I think it just came from, I always knew it was going to be it. From Jump Street, from day one, I always knew once I stepped into that studio, I would make it mine. And I was the youngest there. I had something to prove. So, yeah, man, I can't take all the credit. It's literally just, like I said, God's favor on it. I think just seeing the success and the hard work and seeing how many people I was making proud. A lot of people didn't believe I'd be an artist. I grew up in the church, and I still very much am involved in the church. So it didn't seem like the archetype for me. But if you really paid attention, you know that it was only right for me to be on a stage and perform.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? I am Jamaican and Black American, so I grew up in the AME church, African Methodist Episcopal Church, and basically everybody from the 60s and even before on who made it in music as singers, that's where their foundation was. So it's interesting to say people didn't see that, where for me, that's usually where it starts, right? I can drum. I can drum because I went to church. That all of my musical abilities, even though it's not something I pursue as a profession, but I like to keep up with it. Again, I love music. That came from church.
You know what it is the fact that it was rap that I was doing. That's really what it
Yeah.
was, you know? Because, like, there were a couple times I performed downstairs in the church basement at our hall parties. It could be Mother's Day. Like, I used to write Mother's Day, Father's Day songs for my parents.
Yeah.
And my dad would be like, "Oh, you're gonna perform this at church."
Yeah.
It's like, all right, but you got the aunties in there, and as a kid, I was such an energetic. I still am now, but as a kid, I really was like moving around. You know, at that time, I didn't know how to manage my asthma, so you know, just full of energy. You could
Yeah.
hear what I was saying, but you could just tell, wow, he's hype. And
Yeah.
it's just like all the uncles and aunties are like, what is going on here? You know, so that's really what I think it was just the rap aspect, and it's always got a bad rep.
That makes sense. I actually, this is such a great segue because I wanted to ask about the cultural blending that you're doing. Right, you're Nigerian. Both your parents are Nigerian.
Yes.
Were you born here?
I was.
Okay, so you're first generation American. So first generation Nigerian American. And then you're blending kind of your cultural background with the sounds of the culture that's around you.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that's, I guess, how you thought about that, if you were even thinking about that at any point? When did you start thinking about it? Because I'm sure, like, when you first started at, 10 years old, you weren't thinking, like, oh, this is one culture and this is my other culture. But at some point, did you start thinking about, like, okay, I've been doing this, but I want to, incorporate the culture from which I come?
So one of my earliest attempts at even doing the Afro beats that I'm doing now was like back in 2016. I think that it just had to come naturally.
Yeah.
I always was capable. Like, even earlier than that, I think just incorporating my native language of Igbo into my songs was always something I could do. It's just that wasn't the focus early on when I was doing the rapping, you know? And so for me, my mother would always say, like, I'll be real, son, like, I prefer your singing over your rapping. She always believes in my singing voice. And for me, I'm just like, I could hold a note or two, but I always took more pride in when I'm, spitting and going off on a 16. But for me, man, the biggest introduction to the world of when I really like emerged with the Afrobeats was when I signed with my team. We were working in the studio summer of 2019, and my producer plays the Afrobeat record, so I start writing to it. I'm like, all right, boom, let's cue it up. And from there, it was like, oh, snap. Like, they didn't even know that was something I had in the arsenal that I could do. But it was from there, I was like, all right, like, this is really going to be what ends up, taking us to the next level. And just because it's like, it's not common. I'm one of the few people who know how to speak my native language in my community in Boston as a young adult. So it's something that from there on, now it's been full-on records in the language, getting invited to perform at different festivals and performances. Like, now don't nobody get booked more than me for, like, these African Gala nights in Boston for these college shows.
Yep, I swear I see you on a flyer every other week. Like, it's crazy. I just saw one, must have been in the last week. For I don't remember whose organization it was, but I saw one in the last week.
Yes,
so
sir.
I know you're out here working. And I was listening. I don't remember what song it was. I think he probably came out in 2021 because I was listening earlier. Okay. But I'm like, I don't know what he's saying. So I know this is your native tongue. But I think that's dope, right? Like, for me, I've always been someone who has a focus on culture, right? Being somebody who studied a lot of sociology stuff, particularly in college, even though I was a political science major. Like, I was all in the humanities, social sciences. Like, those were the types of classes I was taking. And the way people express themselves through culture, whether it be music, whether it be movies, TV, whatever other art forms, I think it's important. And I think to see somebody doing that, taking pride in their cultural heritage, does so much for people who are watching them. We say all the time, like, representation matters, but we also see all the time people who are neglecting their cultural roots to try to fit in, right? People who didn't get the opportunity to learn their native language, or did and then stop speaking it, right? Or they'll kind of hide it and keep it at home, or they won't wear their, cultural garb outside. Like, all of these things happen because people want to assimilate. But the fact that you have taken the steps intentionally, it's not something that you were necessarily doing out the gate, but you said, you know what? Nah, like, this is important. I'm going to do this. That's another thing that I just think you should be commended on, because all of these things matter. We live in a country, in a world where we have so many different people coming from all these cultural backgrounds. And the more we're able to see them, the more we're exposed to them, I think the better it makes us all. So I think that's a really dope thing. Talk to me about how you actually got signed to your current team. Like, what was that process like?
Yes, sir. So I met my mentor, Brian Price. That's Pops. It's a father figure for real. I met him back in 2011, and it was from a field trip that my mentor, Rick, took me and my group mates to Harvard Law School to get involved with learning about entertainment law.
Mm-hmm.
And so from then, we always kept in touch. I had his business card. I remember like sending over SoundCloud links to him of what I was working on. One day, he brought me to the studio to meet his son, Jay Prism, who's my producer. And so that was back in 2017. Made a couple rap records. It was cool. He always kept in touch with me, would enlist me to work on certain compilation projects. He even took me in as an intern. So he's always had an eye on what I had going on. Always saw potential. And then fast forward, when we started cooking in the lab and making Afrobeat records, they took me to LA back in 2019. And it was my first time out there off of just 8 bars I had written for a pop record.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Amanda Holly. And we shot a video out there, and they invested in me before I ever signed the dotted line. So it wasn't until then they sat down and met my parents. Were like, hey, like, we wanna sign him to our independent company, Comatose. And so we met. Literally, this is a couple days before the world shut down on March 13th back in 2020. Signed a contract, and so since then, we've been putting out singles. Obviously, like I mentioned, we got our song and video game, ESPN recognition, SZA at the TD Garden opening for them. Yeah, man, it's been quite a journey, and it's not easy. But with every team, there's always moments where we got to put our head down, come together, and come out stronger.
Mm-hmm. So. Can you give us some more background into like that strategy? What is it like to think about yourself as an artist, but as an artist you're a business, right? What is that strategy, right? So the program that I'm in, that's the reason that I'm out in LA is about, innovation and entrepreneurship within the media space. And so we think about like 5-year projections and, revenue streams and things of that nature. As an artist, you are a business, so you have to think about all of those things for yourself and for your work. Yep. Can you talk about that strategy? Why would you decide to release 6 singles and then an EP, or 3 singles across a year and then I'm dropping an album? Like, what goes into these decisions?
Yeah. It was through my team that I was able to really learn that whole concept of being a business for real. If you knew how many articles that I get sent from Pops to like look through, read about like where the industry is going, they don't care how talented I am. They don't care that my song is fire. What they care about is, what's the story behind it that makes it pop so that the song sustains. That's why these TikTok videos are what consumes more of my time than actually being in the studio. That's why doing polls about my new single, Make Up Your Mind, and getting people's interactions and answers. A lot of it has been things that I'm not the biggest fan of, but I understand that in order to get to where I'm trying to get to, this is what matters now. And so part of the strategy has been literally reading, paying attention to the climate, and grabbing people's attention and being able to hold it. That's another thing. It's like there's so many talented people out there, not to discredit myself, but it's like, what is going to make people care about what it is? Everybody's trying to get attention. There's billions of other things that are trying to get our attention. So how do we hold people here? And so in terms of even releasing, like, my first album's about to drop under Comatose, and people are probably wondering what took so long. There's a lot of it behind it, but sometimes it's just these days it's not just about dropping an album and not having no rollout and no plan. Sometimes it's about, a single, letting it build up, getting more fans. People can look at my Instagram and think I'm the man, I'm hot or whatever, but like, I think my talent is worth having 10 million followers. I don't have that right now.
Yeah.
So a lot of it has been just learning, studying up, having to sit back, even when it looks like everybody's popping and they're dropping stuff, my team got the drop on what's really hot and what's really going on. So we know what's what, and that's how we've been moving for the past 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, strategy is important. Strategy is key. And then one thing you touched on is, the social media part of it. I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of artists, whether it be on this podcast or just for research for my thesis, talking about like what is the process like of you trying to build your audience? What's the part you like the least about the entire artistic process? Everybody's like, the social media side is just like ugh. And one of the things that I've been talking about just personally is the way that particularly TikTok fuels trends, but not necessarily quality and sustained art. So even somebody like, like an Ice Spice who's gotten like a huge platform, but like she was like, I forgot what was that song called, Munch, right? Like that was probably 2-3 years ago now. Right now, how's it looking? Like obviously she's still gained a level of success that's like admirable, notable, right? But it is hard to keep that high. Like she came out super hot, and then from there, it's like you're trying to match that level of attention. How are you thinking about that? I know obviously you have to continue to pump out this content. When you drop a single, right, make up your mind, you're promoting it all of the time. But how are you also thinking about like, all right, I know people's attention spans are really short. So how can we make sure this thing is sustained? How are you thinking about that?
Well, man, honestly, as you were mentioning, like, what's the least favorite part of it? Obviously, it's the TikToks, and just to be real, I think what I tell myself is this: there's nothing I'm not willing to do in order to get to where I'm trying to get to in this artistry. As long as it doesn't compromise my morals, I'm not going against the God I serve, I'm cool. So if I gotta dance a little bit, I'm good at dancing. All right, as long as it's not nothing crazy, and I can dance a little bit. There can be an artistic spin on it. But you know what? To answer your question, man, I'm a person who values a story.
Yeah.
Like, I know that with a brand, you have to have a story. I've just learned that sometimes, man, with the attention span you mentioned, sometimes the story doesn't even matter. That whole hero story from, I learned back in 6th grade about, like, the beginning, the rising action, the climax, the falling action. I'm so big into those, even with the album. And I'll always be that way. But sometimes, man, like, one of the homies just got viral off of talking about how much he loves matcha. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Shout out my brother Kyle Member, man. Like,
Nigga now.
yeah. Nobody give a damn about this artistry I'm talking about. And I can really be talking about, like, some real. So I guess it's about, sometimes that 8 seconds is going to be more memorable than that 1 minute TikTok video. And it varies, man. Because here's the thing. I've had records where it was a clip of a reel of that same record and the lyrics and all that, and it don't hit maybe even 50 likes. But a video of me dancing with my diploma from graduating college, 1,000 plus whatever likes.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally, there's no rules. There's no formula.
Facts.
So to answer your question, man, I think, like, it really just boils down to being a student. Like, it's about studying TikTok, seeing what hits, seeing what doesn't hit, and being able to capture the audience in your own way, in your own unique way.
For sure. I mean, you've mentioned being a student a bunch of times, and I think that, especially, I mean, again, it's in anything, but particularly if you're striking out on your own, whether it be as an artist or in a more traditional entrepreneurial sense, you really got to study a lot of stuff, right? So you got to study the music industry, but that then requires you to study like social media trends. That then requires you to study, all of these different things. And I always am rooting for people who are going out and putting themselves out there in a way that is authentic, because that's the type of stuff that for me over the course of my life, I've looked at people who have done that, and that's helped me develop. And like you said, there's nothing you're not willing to do, given a couple caveats. And it's that doing whatever it takes thing that I recognize, and I'm like, salute to that, because that's what you have to do. Like, you might have came into this thinking, because when you started making, you said you started making music in 2010. Game was a lot different than it is in 2025.
A lot different.
So you probably came in thinking like, oh, it's going to be this way, it's going to be that way. And then 5 years after that, oh, now it's different. 5 years after that, now it's different. So you always have to evolve. And I just, again, I think it's a challenge. And so I want people to understand that to be anything in life requires evolution, and also requires a level of strength and commitment to your craft and to the grind. So again, always want to salute that, because I know that this shit ain't easy. So much respect to you. Can you talk a bit about kind of bubbling locally, getting your name locally versus national recognition, right? Like, I'm sure everybody in Boston know you. Like, if you tapped into the music scene in Boston, like, Echezona. But what's it like? One, what's it like to have that level of recognition in your city, like where people know you? And then two, having aspirations bigger than that, how are you approaching going global?
Thank you for asking that. Well, one, it's a blessing. I don't want to take for granted the love in a city that's always been notorious for being recognized as a hater city. Um, I'm thankful to have my name ring bells in different rooms, especially with the new heights I've reached. So I'm bossing everywhere I go. I always tell people I'm a Nigerian man from the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston. I rep it to the fullest. What I've realized, though, is that at one point, the goal was to be the best rap artist in Boston. Nah, I've done everything that needs to be done under the sun in Boston,
Yeah.
regardless of whether I've got a BMA or not. I don't have a BMA, but there's nothing I haven't done. I've done everything that needs to be done in Boston, point blank, period. There's nothing I need to prove. There's no, the open mics I'm involved with now are me helping put on for the youth in the city,
Yep.
like 617 Peak. And, that's literally my focus now is giving youth that were in my shoes and bigger heights for them. That's it. In terms of being global, I think I'm just embracing, not even I think, I know I'm embracing the space I'm in because it's lonely. See how you said, yo, what box do we put you in? I always used to feel so, I would feel a little bit of a way that, there were moments where I felt like I was kind of counted out when it came to just being recognized as a music heavy hitter in the city. And I think it's more so, I have to acknowledge, I haven't dropped as frequently as my peers. But what does it say that I don't drop nearly as frequently as my peers and I'm still the most booked?
Talk your shit.
What does that say? That has to account for that. Something has to account for that. So it's like,
shit.
and like I said, if it was up to me, of course y'all would have had 5 albums by now. Politics come into play. It's a lot bigger, especially when you're working with a team that has a certain vision that's going to take longer. But I'm not in the same bubble as a lot of them. I'm too Afrobeat for the hip-hop artists, and I'm too rap for the Afrobeat artists. But I'm the one who's the best at the highest level. So to answer your question, man, for me, it's I talk about moving out to LA because, one, just the environment, the exciting things. Whenever I come out here, I have to give it 2 weeks because you never know what could pop up.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? By the time this comes out, I will be able to talk about how I went to I can't even say that. Let me chill. I don't want to even.
Keep that on the top. But if we know.
But we'll recap.
We know.
We'll recap. So things like that doesn't come from me worried about what the validation is from my city.
Yeah.
My job now is to go out and represent the city where I go.
Yeah.
So when I'm in certain rooms, they gonna know it's Boston in the room. They gonna know it's 02121 in the room.
Yeah.
That's what I have right now. But other than that, man, I will always speak for the kids in my city. Always. My affiliations outside the studio, like I said, 617 Peak. We put on for the youth in our city. We put on the largest open mic in the state.
Yeah.
So, with people like Ikenna and Duba who put on and really value giving the kids a voice and a platform. That's what I'm about now in my city. It's no longer about me trying to prove to my peers. You know what I'm saying? We've seen it. If you know, you know. Simple. So
I love that. Because shout out to 617 Peak.
yes, sir.
I just think it's so important to give back to the youth. I mean, your story specifically, you can see what happens when you invest in the youth. So can you talk about your work with 617P? Can you talk about just what it means for you, how fulfilling it is to give back to the youth, to take your expertise, to take the real learned knowledge that you've gotten by doing the damn thing, and then be able to impart that on people who also want to do the damn thing. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, man. So I was the inaugural Peak Kid, and by that I mean the first open mic hosted by my brother Ike, shout out to him, was in 2018 at the State House. And I was 17. Was it 17? Yes, I was 17. And I performed a piece I had written back in high school. And it was an intimate room. It was always, for me, a big blessing to get to showcase my talent in a room full of people who could just be able to hear, and it was snaps that would be in response to what I performed. Since then, I've been a part of the following open mic in 2019, and then I would just show up to help out my brother who I grew up with at the same church because I believed in his vision. Off the strain. He wasn't paying me nothing. I was just like, yo, you need help carrying these boxes? Yo, what can I do to help out? Just showing loyalty. It wasn't until he gave me a call in 2023, listen, man, I'm about to do the summer program for Peak. I need your help. I was like, all right, Brett, let's do it. And so since then, I've been program manager, helping to oversee, the interns and, handle administrative things, email, sitting in meetings, XYZ. And I've grown so much in a row, man. I've made a lot of mistakes just in the sense of getting accustomed to taking initiative, taking the first leap rather than waiting on being told what to do.
Yep.
And I credit that to being around important mentors within Peak. So, like I said, Ike, Troy, Amanda Shea, who is our poetry goddess in our
Shout out
city.
to Amanda Shea,
Yeah, she's her. So, and through that, I've been able to be inspired by the youth around me there. Like Nay Speaks, Best New Artist 2023.
She be killing it too.
Yana G, Best New Artist 2024. So, Data Dawn, Asar, the list goes on. All of Ethereal Vision. So, these are people who, Maya Divine, these are people who have only like inspired me, and they're younger than me. Through Peak, I've been able to gain a sense of belonging to my city for real. Everybody can talk about what they do for themselves, what they do for their artistry. What have you done? What have you given? How have you served? You know what I'm saying? Have you listened to somebody and asked, how can you help? That's what I've learned through being with Peak. And that's what's got me in the position I'm in now, where now I serve as a body person for mayoral candidate Josh Kraft, someone who's always been involved with the youth, someone who's always been down for the community. And our job is to help get him into the mayor's office come November of 2025. So things like that, I credit Peak for being like a stepping stone towards learning how to even take on the next job opportunity and really show up. This is outside of rap. This is me as a human being.
Yeah.
This is me being of service. So always loyal to Peak, thankful for, the growth, and I will always be involved in anything they got going on.
Amazing. Like I said, to me, that's the important stuff, right? Like like I've said, artistry, music in particular, for me, my interest in it has been from the time I was born. From growing up in the church, playing music, watching my dad, eventually learning, from the drummer at church and then taking drum lessons, but then listening to artists on a national level, listening to the radio and being able to dive into their music and being able to learn about myself. I've always looked at music as an avenue to be able to give to people. And what you've been speaking on is using music, both the music itself, literally, and then the things you've learned from it and giving to people. To me, it's that give and take. As people, we are nothing without other people. Like, quite literally, you're not here without your parents. But all the things that you've learned have come from somebody else. And so I think it is ultra important that we, no matter what space we exist in, whether you're an artist, whether you're a doctor or a lawyer, whether you're a business person, whether you're whatever, a teacher, all of these things, find your way to contribute back to people, because that's how we got here and that's how we'll advance together. So, I think that is beyond important. I think what you're doing is on every level is admirable. And so I think you need your flowers for that. As far as kind of what's happened musically in the world, we've come off of like a really good year in music. It's been exciting to me. Kendrick just did the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Drake and Party dropped their album.
Yep.
The discourse around music has been something I haven't seen in a very long time. What are your thoughts just on like the music scene as a whole, any of the developments over the last year?
Man, it's a variety of emotions. For me, like, this year has only made me appreciate hip-hop, lyricism. Like, it just awakens the writer in me and just showing that it can be done. Like, I look at the Super Bowl, or I just look at these Melbourne, Australia stages and just think to myself, like, man, this is what I'm born for. I'm so, like, there's no hunger that I have more than when I see, my favorite artists in spaces where it's a stadium, it's a crowd of people who are, like, in awe of what you're doing. I don't think, that's why I keep saying, like, I love my city. The Middle East alone is not my ceiling. I can't, not with what I do. No. I can't be, the premier performer from my city, and yet my ceiling is just some intimate nightclub.
Yeah.
Nah, man. I was born to do stadiums,
Yeah.
like really put on a show, a story. And I think that this year has only been a blessing to have songs that stand the test of time, to remember, appreciate. It's a beautiful time to be in. Like, I always wonder what type of stories I'd be able to tell about my college years to my future kids, and part of it will be the music and what that takes me back to.
Yep.
So I'm thankful, man. Honestly, through it all, whether it's hip hop beef, whether it's new artists emerging, our legends getting their flowers.
Yep.
I'm here for all of it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Also, stop letting this beef shit make y'all not appreciate artists. Yo, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it, bro. All right, I said Drake got smoked in the battle. I still listen to Drake. Like, why are we acting like this? This man don't know you, bro. You caping. Like, it's in both sides. It's just, to me, that's one of the things that, people on the internet especially, like, they're always gonna take things too far.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a beautiful moment. Like,
Yeah.
we were all captivated over the 6 weeks or however long it took. That one weekend when we got, I think it was Euphoria 616, Family Matters, Beat the Grams, Not Like Us. I think Drake dropped Heart Part 6 all in like 5 days.
Yeah.
We was all stuck to our phones, tweeting, TikToking, Instagramming. Like, that was a moment that I'm going to tell my kids about. Like,
100%.
you don't know nothing about...
Yeah, best hip hop beef of all time.
Spring,
honestly,
summer 2024 was
oh
a movie.
My goodness.
Was a movie.
What? I know exactly where I was when I first heard
My
Euphoria.
goodness. Like, oh man, I remember even probably before that, it was Like That. I remember when Like That dropped.
Yeah.
If you was tapped into hip hop, man, like, we've been waiting for this for like 10 years.
Yeah, facts.
Like,
facts.
we sitting like, they throwing shots back and forth. I want someone to jump out the window.
Yeah.
And when that Future and Metro album dropped, I had like 5 people text me Like That, and they was like, Trevor, did you fucking hear this? I listened to it. I said, oh, it's up.
Bro.
It's up.
I was in Atlanta when Future dropped that day. I was in Atlanta. My boy was like, yo, Kendrick dissing Drake? I said, what?
What are you talking about?
Dog, no way. Talk about some all your dogs getting buried. I said, oh my goodness.
Crazy.
Yeah, no, I live for that, man. It's the sport.
That's one of the moments. It's just one of the moments. It's a legendary moment, and to all of us who appreciate the art form, that is just one of those moments that you just have to sit there and say, yo, respect to both of them for putting themselves in the ring. Like, even though I be clowning Drake sometimes, I'm like, that nigga got washed. But it's like, he stepped the fuck up.
He's one of my biggest influences in my artistry ever. I can never take that away from him.
He's so versatile. He's so talented. Like, and I have plenty of criticisms of Drake, but at the end of the day, that man is a great artist, and that's why we have criticisms of him, because he is great, and you cannot take that away from him. And he showed off. Like, he got a pen. Like, he got a pen. And that's the one thing I always say about Drake. Like, he don't be ducking the fades. Like, he be getting in the ring. So win, loss, draw, I gotta respect you for throwing your hat in the ring. It was one of these, like I said, it was one of those moments that I'm finna tell my kids about. I'm gonna sit them down and be like, yo, you gotta watch this 3-hour breakdown, because you gotta understand. You gotta understand.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is the doors that get open. Like, from this battle, we had Kendrick do his pop out, where it's an Amazon special. He's selling out the stadium. Like, that opens doors for people to be able to have opportunities to do collaborations with brands where their stuff is getting live streamed. He goes and does the Super Bowl. That opened door for people. So I think that's one of those things that, I just, like I said, I enjoyed that whole moment that was basically a year long. Now, as for you.
Yes, sir.
You have an album on the way.
Yes.
Is there anything you can tell us about it?
Yeah, man. So my album, the title of it is Enyi. And Enyi means friend in the Igbo language. With this album, like, I was in a space where I wanted something that would be a proper introduction to the sound that I've been introducing to folks. Because everybody feels like, oh, this is new. Like, somebody thanked me recently. I want to shout out Yelena. She's a very talented Latin singer, Latin artist from our city, and she said, I want to, thank you for all you do for the African community. Like, she showed a lot of love to me about what I do, and I didn't realize, like, when she said it, it was like, oh, wow. I didn't realize, like, it was really that profound to be acknowledged by someone outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that being said, this album, I can't say too much. I ain't going to tell you how many songs. What I will say, though, is even still, it is me being able to talk to the women, make them dance, make them reflect, make them feel empowered, and also bear a bit of my, like, the whole point of this album, the reason I called it Enyi is because, I'm befriending the listener. And the goal is to open them up to my thoughts, my flaws, my shortcomings, encouraging our healing, and still making songs for everybody to dance. I never realized I'd be the catchy hook guy. If you knew me growing up as a lyricist, when I used to go to Camp Harborview to perform, I was thinking about how I could freestyle and make everybody impress. When I'm standing next to an artist like my brother Clark D, and I was watching how he had hooks that were so captivating, like I knew how that gravitated. Not that my art was any less, it's just that was signifying where the shift was happening. And so to now be called the catchy hook guy, where, oh, my melodies are catchy, is such a testament to the thing we were talking about growth and not being in the same place as an artist. So it's a lot of that. I'm so proud of this project. I truly do believe it is going to be recognized as album of the year to come out of my city, just because of the sounds. Nobody's doing what I'm doing on that. But that's left for the people to say. I know everybody's supposed to say that about their art, but with this being so long of a journey, and with the songs that are on here that people have been dying to hear, I'm very, very confident in it, and I can't wait for the world to hear it.
I'm excited to hear it. You got a single out right now, Make Up Your Mind. Is that going to be on there? Can you tell us that?
It won't be.
Okay, all right. So you're just giving us more music. I like that.
Absolutely.
So he's got a single, Make Up Your Mind, out right now. Go stream that.
Thank you.
The album is coming soon. We're excited to see what this album holds for us. We're excited to see what your continued development as an artist and as a person brings you, and then by extension the rest of us who are following you and listening to you. This has been an honor for me and a pleasure. Like I said, I have been seeing you craft up, cook up. Like I said, he's on a flyer every weekend somewhere doing something. He stayed booked and busy, and that is a testament to the work that it takes to really be successful in anything, but particularly in this music thing, because it's a beast.
Yes, sir.
It's a beast. You got to study, you got to work hard, you got to improve, you got to be self-assured, you got to be all of these different things. And if you didn't get that from this interview, then you weren't listening. So do you have any final words you'd like to wrap us up with?
Man, thank you to you, Trev, for this honor, this privilege to be recognized in this interview, for the flowers you've given. Man, I pray that you only continue to soar and have more distinguished guests on this platform. And for anybody who's been supporting me from day one, I'm very, very, very thankful. More on the way, man. More wins, more success, more blessings. Not everything is perfect. Even as I'm sitting here talking to you, there's always moments that make me grateful for the special days I have where I'm smiling. But I'm here, man. I know that nothing is going to deter me from where I'm destined to go, as long as I continue to keep God first and stay the course, as I have been for almost 15 years now. So I'm thankful, man, and I'm looking forward for the world to continue to see me reach the heights I've always dreamed of. That is a word. Once again, I appreciate you for joining us. Anybody listening, I appreciate y'all. If you are on YouTube watching this, go ahead and give the channel a subscribe, like the video. If you're listening to it on an audio platform, leave a rating and a review. And then can you plug your socials for us real quick? They will be in the description, but just go ahead and give us a plug. Yes, absolutely. This is Echezona. You can find me on Instagram at Echezona2000. That's Echezona 2000. You can find me on the same account on Twitter, Facebook at Echezona Music, TikTok at Echezona2000, Echezona on all streaming platforms, Tidal, Apple Music, Spotify, and yeah, at your newest show. Soon come. He'll be around. Y'all see him around. He's got some moves to make that he's not going to announce here, but you'll see him. You'll see him. Y'all know where to find me. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, _Trev Woods, the podcast on Instagram and TikTok at the Global Renaissance Pod. This has been another episode. I appreciate you for joining me. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.